They thought they could erase me with a pen stroke. They thought grief would leave me too weak to fight. But they forgot one thing: roots run deeper than betrayal. And mine were buried in this soil. My name is Naomi Hale. I'm 68 years old. For nearly half a century, I was a wife, a mother, and the steady heartbeat of Havencrest Orchard, a farm carved out of the hills of Pennsylvania. My hands may be swollen with arthritis now, but they still remember the weight of pruning shears at dawn, the smell of sourdough rising in the oven, the sound of my husband's laughter between the trees. 3 weeks ago, I buried him. Jonah and I were married for 43 years. He was the kind of man who could coax life out of even the most stubborn branch. And in the last year of his life, cancer stripped him down piece by piece until all that remained was a whisper in the dark. "Don't tell the kids yet," he begged me. "Let them have a little more time in the light." I agreed, because loving someone sometimes means carrying the burden alone. But what I didn't realize then was that the burden wasn't mine alone. It had already been lifted from our children, because they had long since set it down. My son, Adam, built his world in glass towers in Boston. A decade of missed birthdays, skipped harvest seasons, quick calls that ended with, "I'll try to come next year." My daughter, Lila, drifted from one failed healing business to another. A yoga retreat here, a wellness brand there. Always funded by the quiet checks Jonah slipped her when she said it was her last chance. I thought death would pull them home, that losing their father would open their eyes to what we'd built, to the roots that raised them. But when they walked through the front door after the funeral, I didn't see mourners. I saw sharks circling blood in the water. The morning after the burial, sunlight spilled across lace curtains Jonah and I hung 3 decades earlier. I brewed coffee, his kind, plain and earthy. But when Adam and Lila came downstairs, sharp in city clothes, they looked like they were stepping into a boardroom. "Mom," Adam began, sliding a folder across the table, "we need to settle things. The house, the orchard, the estate. Settle things." Like decades of love and labor were nothing more than line items on a spreadsheet. They told me the orchard was too much for my age, that the house was too big, too heavy for one woman. Lila leaned forward with a rehearsed smile. "There's a retirement community near the coast. Sunnygrove. Friends, activities, safety. Dad would want you cared for." And then Adam opened the folder. "Contracts. A deed." His voice cold, rehearsed. "Dad wanted Melissa and me to take over." I studied the signature on the paper. Smooth. Strong. Jonah's hand hadn't looked like that for months. Not since morphine turned his grip into a trembling ghost. "This isn't from our lawyer," I said. "Mom, don't make this harder," Adam replied. "There's a developer. $7 million for the land. It's time to let go. $7 million. To tear out trees Jonah and I planted with our bare hands, to pave over history with concrete and cul-de-sacs." That night I didn't cry. I lay awake in the farmhouse, listening to the creaks in the walls, the wind in the branches. Every sound was familiar. What wasn't familiar anymore was the silence in my children's hearts. Why morning, their plan sharpened. Lila stood by the door with my suitcase already packed. "Just come see Sunnygrove," she said, too brightly. "You'll love it." I told them I needed my medication. And I went upstairs, where they couldn't see my hands shaking. But I didn't pack medicine alone. Behind the mirror in the bathroom, where Jonah had built a secret panel decades ago, I pulled out a small fireproof box. Inside it, my passport, old documents, and something far more valuable. A deed. 20 acres of land in my maiden name. Bought long before Jonah and I even married. Land with water rights. Land no developer could build without. I slipped it into my bag. And when I came back down, I smiled. "I'm ready." We drove. Past the blooming fields, past the school where I once read to children, past everything we built. But they didn't take me to Sunnygrove. 20 minutes down a dirt road. Adam pulled onto the shoulder. He opened my door with chilling calm. "This is where you get off, Mom." I stared at him, disbelief heavy in my throat. "She'll contest the will," Adam muttered. "This is cleaner." And just like that, my children, my flesh and blood, drove away, leaving me on the roadside with a suitcase I hadn't packed. The dust from their car clung to my coat. The silence pressed in. But I didn't crumble. I didn't beg. Because in my purse I carried something they didn't know existed. Something stronger than their betrayal. The deed. I walked for miles. Blisters burning, sun on my neck. Every step my resolve hardened. By the time I reached Miller's Gas and Grocery, I wasn't a discarded widow anymore. I was a woman with leverage. Ray Miller stepped outside, his apron dusted with flour. "Naomi? You all right? You look pale." "Just a long day," I said. But it wasn't just a day. It was the start of a war. Inside, I borrowed his phone, called Harold Jameson, the lawyer who had stood by our family for decades. When I told him about the forged will, the roadside abandonment, the land deed, his voice grew low and steady. "Naomi," he said, "what they tried to pull won't stand. That deed in your name, it's the linchpin. Without those water rights, they have nothing. We'll stop this." By the next day, Harold had filed an emergency injunction. The sale froze. The developer panicked. Lawyers scrambled. And for the first time in months, I slept. Not in my old farmhouse. It was poisoned with betrayal. But in a small apartment above the bakery in town. Cinnamon in the mornings. Peace at night. Adam and Lila texted, then called. Not apologies. Just desperation. "We didn't know about that land. Can we fix this?" No. Some things don't get fixed. That I didn't fight them with screaming. I fought them with silence, with patience, with the truth written in ink on an old deed. And in the end, truth was louder than greed. The developer pulled out. The orchard survived. I donated the water rights to the local co-op so the land could never be sold off to strangers. And when I walk past those blooming trees now, I don't feel bitterness. I feel strength. Because that day on the gravel road, abandoned, dismissed, betrayed, I remembered who I was. Before I was a wife. Before I was a mother. I was Naomi Hale. A woman who planted roots deeper than any storm could rip out. So if you've ever been cast aside, underestimated, treated as if you were nothing, remember this: strength isn't in shouting. It isn't in revenge. Strength is in standing your ground quietly, until the world realizes you cannot be moved. My orchard still stands. My name is still on the deed. And my story, it's mine again. That if my story touched you, share it. And if you've ever been underestimated but found your strength, tell me in the comments. Your story matters. More than they'll ever understand.